If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson cries for every dime.
Welcome to Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Simply the Law of Life provides free legal advice and encourages happiness and quality of life. Now, here's Simply the Law of Life with Gary C. Johnson and Keith Casebolt.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into Studio A at Creative Media. I'm Keith Casebolt, and it's the new Gary Johnson Show.
Improved.
Well, we've made a lot of changes. We've made changes in the studio. We've made changes in the name. A whole lot of changes.
That's right. Talk to you a little bit about that, my friends. How you guys and gals doing anyway? Remember back over the years we've come up, Simply the Law, right? When we started out with this show years ago, Keith and I discussed it, and I kept telling Keith, I said, Keith, I change people's lives in my law firm one at a time. They're injured, we take their problems, we proceed to fix it to the extent it can be fixed with money, and we change their lives. So we did the program, and we named it Simply the Law, right? Because that's what I did. Over time, with Keith and I doing a lot of talking with each other, we concluded that it's bigger than that, what we may be able to do. And it's more than that. And that one of the discussions we had one day was, when we leave this world, how are we going to be judged? Are we going to be judged by how much money we may have? Are we going to be judged by our car, our home, our fame? Or are we going to be judged by the number of times we did something that may have changed someone's life, that when we met them, that we left them better because they've met us and knew us, and that we made a difference to people more than just one at a time, maybe actually two. So we slowly over the years started talking more about life and our life experiences and the things we read about, to try to share them with you in the hope that it may make you feel a little better about yourself and about life. Now you have to understand, Keith and I were not doctors. We're not psychologists. We're not preachers. We're none of that. We're just human beings trying to get through this struggle of life like you the best we can, and hope that some way along the way that we would have made a little bit of impact in helping someone else better deal with their struggles in life. Therefore, we have changed the name of the program. Simply the Law of Life, because that's the true law that matters.
You know, Gary, it also, early on when I was talking with you, you said, Keith, I help clients, they've got broken bones, they've got broken bodies. Those things can heal. I try to get them money, but the pain that they suffer and what happens with their mind, the injuries, you said no one talks about what they go through. So we started doing a radio program called Simply Life.
Right.
And on that program, each week, we talked about life. We talked about our books, Dale Carnegie, Maxwell, all of the books, to try to help in that area. And it's just kind of merged together.
And we ask you guys to send us some emails on how we may have helped you, or maybe give us some of your insight. I ask you to send it to Gary at GaryCJohnson.com. There are some of you that's watching this program right now that thought about sending an email and you didn't. And you did that because that little voice in your head said, you're not important. Gary and Keith really don't want to hear from you. That's not that big a deal what my problem is and what my story is. It means nothing. After all, you're just a little me, right? So you didn't send the email. The next time that voice starts out, I want you to say to it, Gary said, hey, Gary said for me to send him an email because he wants to know. We learn from your emails. it helps us. And maybe then we can help others. And I'll prove it to you in just a little while when we bring on our special guest that actually sent us an email. Okay? Now, before I do that, I want to mention the fact on our emails, Norman Page sent me a wonderful email. In fact, Norman may very well become one of our guests in the near future. He and I are going to be discussing it. Tanya Everidge sent me a really heartwarming email. Deborah Rainier sent me a really fantastic email. Sylvia Griffith didn't send an email, but I actually got to talk to her. And my heart went out to her, and I hope what I said to her may have made a little bit of difference to her. Then I've got a shout out to my friend, Leona Campbell. Leanna, you sent me an email. Thank you so much. You are a dear friend. And then we got an email from a fellow by the name of Terry Hawkinsmith, who has a tragic situation. And Keith, you and I have discussed this a lot. Would you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, when we're getting emails, Gary, you know, we've got some great success stories, we've got some hellos, and we've got some emails that's brought us to tears. And Terry's story is one of those stories that you can't help but read, and your heart breaks for the situation that Terry's going through. And Terry, I would say this to you. In the Bible, the first promise that's made is honor thy father and thy mother, and things will go well with you. And I've got to believe, after reading your email, that you are showing that honor toward your mother. It's a tough situation. It's a situation that Gary and I can't fix, but it is a tough situation, and our heart goes out to you, and what we hope and pray is that you can find some answers to be able to deal with what you're dealing with, and that you can continue on. Gary, when you get these emails and you read the stories, it makes you realize how much we need each other.
That's right. And one other thing, Terry, Keith and I have an absolute rule, and it's one that we've had for years. We cannot get involved in conflict, because then we have destroyed what we're trying to do. We just can't get involved in conflict. The only recommendation that I have for you is talk to that voice in your head and ask it to help you under circumstances that you have no control over. Find a way that you may be able to help your mother under these circumstances that are what they are. And that, okay, that's it. Now, Keith.
You know, I got to tell you, after getting the emails, when you started talking about this, Gary, and the other night we did a program and you did it on joy and sorrow, and you got the call from an individual who needed to hear that because of the loss of a loved one. Devastating. And as I read these emails and as I see our friends that are watching us, I realize how much we need to support each other. Any kind word that can be given, you never know the difference it's going to make.
We need each other so bad. And we need to have empathy. We need to care. And again, this is what Keith and I are doing now. And we hope we can make a difference in your life. Just a little bit, so you can have a little bit more contentment and happy, understanding that there's nobody else in the world like you. You are one of a kind. Keith, Kathi Sizemore is here, and she sent me a nice, wonderful email. And as soon as I got her email, she happened to be kind enough to put her phone on it. The second I read her email, I called her. And I said, Kathi, this is so important what you have to say. Will you please be on our next show? And she agreed. So we're going to take a break now, and we're going to bring on Kathi Sizemore. And I think you will love to hear the struggles of her life and how she dealt with them.
Right now would be a good time to pick up the phone and call a friend and say, hey, tune in to the new Gary C. Johnson show. Simply the Law of Life, because when you hear Kathy's story, you're going to see how you can overcome some huge obstacles. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this.
Who really knows which lawyer you should choose? Other lawyers know. They've invited Gary C. Johnson to teach his method of judo law in Denver, Atlanta, New Orleans, and across the nation. Gary used judo law to set the record for the largest personal injury verdict in the history of Kentucky. Now, which lawyer should you choose? The choice is clear. Gary C. Johnson. This is an advertisement.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Simply the Law of Life in our new studio here in Creative Media. By the way, everything is new except this table we've had for 22 years. And there's something else new. We've got our very first guest on our show. And Gary, when you sent me the email on Kathi Sizemore, I read it, and as I was going down the list, I said I would have stopped there. I would have quit here. I would have gave up here. I would still be moaning and complaining. And I kept going down. It is a wonderful story.
Kathi, I want you to give a little background and then tell my friends the struggle you went through, and then we will discuss how you managed to get to do it. Could you share with us?
I'm 55 years old. I raised 2 children. I got married early in life. I had my son at 20. I met my husband a couple years later, and we, got together. We lived together for 6 years, and I got pregnant with my daughter, so we got married. It wasn't the best relationship, but I thought that I should make it work and raise my children. And little by little, it became somewhat abusive on both sides, and I have to take responsibility for some of it. I don't think that a person should blame everybody for their problems, and they have to take some responsibility. So I just kept thinking maybe we can make it work, maybe things could be better, and little by little they just got worse and worse. When my children got a little bit older, I started coming to the realization that there wasn't anything to our marriage, and if I stayed any longer, I started to believe that I was in the wrong place, and I was in the wrong marriage, and I was just in the wrong place of life. And sometimes when you start thinking, how did you get to this place? You made the decision to get to this place. And a lot of times those decisions are hard to back out of. They're hard to realize that you might have made the wrong turn somewhere in life. I was thankful for my children because they came out of, the relationships, but as far as the marriage, it was not a good marriage to be in. And when you come to that realization, then you're faced with divorce or wake up the next day and forget about divorce. You only have 2 choices. And it took me a couple of months to wrestle with my inside voice saying, yes, you should, no, you shouldn't. Look what you're going to give up, but look what you might get. And I just somehow one day something told me to get up and file for divorce, and that's what I did. That was just the beginning. It was kind of the end of one chapter, but the beginning of another chapter. And then when I started thinking of what am I going to do now with my life that I'm not married, I had always had a dream of going to college, but as for a lot of people, life gets in the way and people never do get to realize their dreams. But and it wasn't even wanting to realize that dream. It was almost just something to fill my time with. So I enrolled in college, and the very first day of the very first semester was English class, and I didn't even know what I kept telling myself, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I don't even know why I'm here. I don't know anything. I don't know how to use a computer. I hadn't been in school in 20 years. I didn't know what I was doing, but it felt like the right place to be, and I stuck at it, and I graduated.
Kathi, you were, at this time, what age were you?
I was 44 when I started college.
So you're 44 years old. You used a term when you were talking, sometimes life gets in the way. Was that inner voice of saying, what are you thinking? You're 44 years of age. You can't go back to college. You had your chance. It didn't work. How dare you think you can go back to college?
Yeah, I guess it was just wanting to experience something. You know, I had graduated high school and had all kinds of plans to go to college. I wanted to be, you know, a doctor. I wanted to be stuff that people needed in the world. And
Now let's talk about something that may be some way for our folks to understand how you did what you did. As we were discussing earlier, I asked you how you were able to fight the voice and to deal with the voice in your brain to go forward the way you did. And one of the things you told me is that you could visualize it in your mind. Tell us a little bit about that.
I always had an idea of how my life should be. I always had a vision of myself as something, and I never saw that vision as just a make-believe. You know, I saw it as real. It was just kind of like on the other side of the ocean. Like if you're standing on one side of the ocean, how do you get over to the other side? You know, you got to take a boat or you got to swim. You know, you got two ways to do it. Well, I couldn't, you know, I could see that vision, but at some points in my life, I kind of just put it away, put it in the closet.
I think you said to use the word fog.
Yes.
In your email, that the fog of your mind set in and tried to block your vision.
Yeah,
and then I guess the chatterbox took over.
That's exactly right. The fog creates an illusion of what, you know, you might think your life is, and you might feel like it's the right place for you to be, but when the fog goes away and when you actually let your, like you said, your subconscious or your unconscious sometimes mind, you know, really get to work on yourself, you sometimes realize that you're not in the right place and your life is not what you was meant to be or you had actually intended it to be.
Another thing you told me was that you learned the technique of talking to yourself as though there were two of you. Tell us about that.
And that happened as a little tiny girl. I can remember myself talking to myself, telling me, don't go down this street, don't make sure that you stay away from these people. And it's always kind of kept me safe. And it's always been a thing that I've always listened to myself if I start talking to myself.
So,
and it's
so
Kathi
you had
talking to
discussions with
Kathi.
yourself.
Oh, yes.
Kathi, when was the turning point? Because you said here you are, 44, you're in college with students who are 18, 19, and you're doing this, you're actually doing it. When was the turning point that the inner voice said, hey, we're doing the right thing. We're going to do this. We're going to graduate. We're going to get a degree. We're going to get a profession. All of our hopes and dreams are going to come true. Do you remember a day that happened?
I can remember in the very beginning of semesters, the first semesters, when I would write papers, turn in papers, and all the kids in the class was coming asking me how did I know things that, you know, and I said, it's just life. I mean, you know, you write about your own experiences, and that's why I said it was such a good feeling to just be able to sit down and write things and then get farther along the path that you're wanting to go on, you know, by those things. And people was asking me in my classes for advice on how to write a paper or what to write, and it just got me, you know, a little farther here and there, you know.
Now, where you had the encouragement.
Yeah, it and you know, then it was just kind of like, well, you know, maybe I can do this. You know, I got through the first semester and I said, well, maybe I can do the second one.
Okay, now, this is important. Since you conquered it all, tell my friends, what do you do now?
Halfway through college, and I started going to into accounting, I kept hearing my little voice inside telling me that it wasn't where I wanted to be. And I didn't know where I wanted to be, but I know I didn't want to go into accounting, even though I was really good at it. I went in my advisor and she showed me the word social work, and as soon as I saw the word, I said, that's it. And I didn't even know what social work actually was. I just said, that's what I want to do right there. So I switched my major, blew through it. I mean, it was just like I had already learned that everything. Had no problem with it and graduated. I started working 5 years ago for an agency. We provide family preservation program to at-risk families who have children who has either been removed by DCBS, social services, or is in the process of being reunified. And we actually do an intervention program that helps them be better parents, improve their parenting skills.
How gratifying is it to do the work you're doing when you're actually helping people? And in your email, you were a little more explicit in describing the conditions some of these people are in. Could you share that a little bit with these folks?
We work with families who face homelessness. I mean, children that are homeless. Some have food insecurities. A lot of parents are use illegal substances, abuse prescription medication. I've had heroin addicts. I've had some people who have been child abusers. Some are they are survivors of child abuse, and they carry them same feelings into their actions as parents.
And one last thing I'd like to get out of you. Does that little voice inside your head tell you how proud it is of you?
Well, I just hope that.
It better.
Yeah.
Because we're proud of you. That's why you're here.
Thank you so much.
And Gary, it sounds like to me that Kathi had the courage to overcome, and look what her life's goal ended up doing, giving other people the courage to overcome.
And not only that, how many people has she now impacted and made a difference in their life because she chose to make a difference in hers? That's the point I'm trying to make.
And Kathi, the deepest thanks, but because of your story here on this program, what we're hoping now, Gary, is there's one person, just one, that's watching that says, Kathi could do it, I can do it.
And thank you so much for being here on our program.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
inviting
you for
me.
having the nerve to do it, okay?
Now listen, wave to your daughter. She's over in Studio B, Alyssa. We got to say her name.
Eliza.
There you go. Kathi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kathi Sizemore. Stay with us. We'll be back to close out the program right after this.
Who really knows which lawyer you should choose? Other lawyers know. They've invited Gary C. Johnson to teach his method of judo law in Denver, Atlanta, New Orleans, and across the nation. Gary used judo law to set the record for the largest personal injury verdict in the history of Kentucky. Now, which lawyer should you choose? The choice is clear. Gary C. Johnson. This is an advertisement.
Welcome back to Simply the Law of Life. What a wonderful guest Kathi Sizemore was.
Yay,
Indeed.
wonderful lady. Remember the two things she said that made her be able to do what she needed. One is she had a vision. Once you have the vision, the chatterbox, is that little voice in your head, will make it happen. Takes time. And the other one is she talked to herself as though there were two of her. Critically important. Chatterbook. Read you what he says about that on self-distances talk. It's one of the tools that you can use to deal with your inner voice. And this is what he says. One way to create a distance when you're experiencing chatter involves language. When you're trying to work through a difficult experience, use your name and the second person you to refer to yourself when you're talking. Doing so is linked with less activation in brain networks associated with rumination and leads to improved performance under stress, wiser thinking, and less negative emotions. Now, negative emotions are crazy. They take over. You start having a panic attack whatever, heart starts racing, say to that voice that's causing that panic attack, hey, why are you doing this? I mean, literally, we're not out here running no marathon. Our heart doesn't need to be racing like that. What do you think? Huh? Let's talk this. Let's discuss this. Huh? And get a little conversation going with yourself, and you may find out it makes a big difference in how you deal with those things. Hey, my palms are sweating, and I've not done anything to sweat. Let's talk about this. Why are you doing this? Huh? Your job is to make me help feel good, not bad. And have this conversations with yourself. And it's in your own words. And you will be amazed. And again, this is just experiences that Keith and I have had in our own lives. Trust me, we're not psychologists. We may be wrong. Try it. What have you got to lose? Okay?
That's a great point. We better tell them how they can get in touch with us.
Oh, Gary at GaryCJohnson.com. Please share with us. We want to know. We're sharing with you, by golly. Now you need to share with us.
Yeah, and maybe Ken can pop up the graphic. We'll show our phone number and everything like that also.
Yeah, let's do that. There's our phone number in case any of you need or heard or anything and need to call us. There's our Lexington office and the Lexington number. And again, GaryCJohnson.com.
My friend, I'm telling you, for a very first new show on a new set, we had a great guest who told us that it can be done.
And gave us 2 of the tools that you can use to do it, to deal with that voice that tells you you can't, you can't, you can't. We're going to have a really interesting chatterbox thing next week. So be sure and tune in. I think you will enjoy it because I get to poke a little bit of fun at Keith on it, okay?
Here, Gary and I are trying to figure this out, and Kathy had already figured it out years ago and sent us the email and said, I'll tell you what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, we're struggling. That's true.
All right, it's the new show, Simply the Law of Life with Gary C. Johnson. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. As always, Gary and I are so forward to seeing you again next week, right here at this same time.
Thank you for watching Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Until next week, may you be safe, blessed, and happy.
If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson cries for every dime.
Who really knows which lawyer you should choose? Other lawyers know. They've invited Gary C. Johnson to teach his method of judo law in Denver, Atlanta, New Orleans, and across the nation. Gary used judo law to set the record for the largest personal injury verdict in the history of Kentucky. Now, which lawyer should you choose? The choice is clear. Gary C. Johnson. This is an advertisement.